all. Carol, some extraordinary reporting by you and your colleagues. I want to talk about this issue that prosecutors are racing against the clock to get an indictment against James Comey. Explain that for folks.
Well, there's two reasons for that race, Chris. One of them is legal, and one of them is extremely political in nature. The legal reason is there's a statute of limitations on perjury and lying to Congress, which are some of the charges that we are told from sources is on the block, if you will, for a case that the Eastern District of Virginia new leadership is considering bringing against the former FBI director. That statute of limitations is 5 years, and based on Comey's testimony, which was September 2020, the end of that time is coming nigh. It's days away. The second reason, the political reason, is that the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney in this important federal prosecutor's office was essentially told he would be fired if he didn't resign because he said he had concerns about whether or not there was enough evidence to bring a case against Comey. Most importantly, though, our sources said he straight up objected to charges against Letitia James, and that was a sort of catapulting moment. Letitia James is another of Donald Trump's members of his enemy list, if you will. And so the challenge with 5 years is basically the statute of limitations is about to toll. And the second issue is the former U.S. attorney that Donald Trump chose for this position and was considered a loyalist, frankly, to that administration, said the facts aren't here. So that guy just left last week, and now a new U.S. attorney, again, chosen by Donald Trump, much less experience, is in charge, and it seems to be, according to our sources, wanting to present this to a grand jury.
So again, Carol, if the indictment is likely to include allegations Comey lied when he was testifying before Congress 5 years ago, I want to play part of the exchange that is apparently at the heart of this.
Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, "Have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?" You responded under oath, quote, "Never." Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
So what's the problem there, Carol? What are they suggesting is wrong?
Well, Senator Cruz, very, very specifically, if you listen to that, Chris, is asking about whether or not Comey authorized Andy McCabe, his deputy director, to leak information to the Wall Street Journal. This had to do with information about the Clinton Foundation and the fact that the FBI was continuing to pursue various open investigations into her and her husband's foundation, the former President Bill Clinton. The problem with hanging a perjury charge on that, and I'm not a lawyer, but I interview a lot of them for my job. The problem with hanging a perjury charge on that is the available evidence as investigated by the Department of Justice, Inspector General, and other outside entities is that Andy McCabe was authorized to leak that information or talk to the press by FBI statute, and that Comey never directly said to him, go ahead and give this information to the Wall Street Journal. In fact, what the Department of Justice's internal investigation concluded was that Andy McCabe, the deputy director, believed he told Comey he was doing this, not that he sought Comey's authorization. And Comey, for his part, did not remember Andy telling him, Mr. McCabe telling him that he was going to do this. Again, a perjury charge on that small point, which Cruz is asking, didn't Andy McCabe say you authorized him to leak this information to the Journal? It's just not borne out by the facts.
So let's go to a lawyer. Barbara, give us a sense of how difficult it could be to bring a case like this in lieu of irrefutable evidence.
Yeah, this is beyond thin. This is not a case I think any reasonable prosecutor would bring. And I think one tell we have for that is the fact that no prosecutor has brought it until we're on the eve of the expiration of the statute of limitations. But if you listen to it, the person's lie must be literally false. It's not enough that someone was misleading or omitted something. You have to pull out and quote the statement and say the person then and there knew that this statement was false. If you listen carefully, as Carol has pointed out, what Comey is saying is it was my testimony that I have never served as the source of a leak. What McCabe seems to have said is that McCabe was the source of a leak and that Comey authorized it. So even if you believe both of them to be true, it is quite possible that McCabe was the leak and Comey says I was not the leak. And so I think even on a preponderance of the evidence standard, that case fails. Put it in front of a jury that has to find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and it's a non-starter. Now, you can get an indictment just by demonstrating probable cause, but the principles of federal prosecution say a prosecutor should not bring a case unless the evidence is sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. That means you believe you have enough evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. There is no rational prosecutor who would bring this case unless there is evidence of which I am currently unaware.
So, Anthony, let me put you in today at the DOJ. When you were at DOJ, would Combs be part of the conversation going into any high-profile prosecution? And are there potential political dangers that you might warn about in taking on not just a big case, but an incredibly huge case that prosecutors aren't sure they can win?
No, in a normal Justice Department, communications is an afterthought. Lawyers and prosecutors make the case, and then at the appropriate time, they bring in the comms people so that the comms people can communicate the decisions that have previously been made. But can I say just one thing broadly about Jim Comey, Chris? I'm of two minds about Jim Comey. On the one hand, I have zero sympathy for Jim Comey. I am mindful that he himself violated DOJ rules, particularly DOJ's 60-day rule in October of 2016, October 28th of 2016, to be exact, when he sent a letter to Congress telling them that the FBI was going to reopen its investigation of Hillary Clinton's use of an email server. That was in the height of the election. It was a bogus investigation. He shut it down 11 days after he opened it, 2 days before Election Day. But at that point, Chris, the damage had been done. And if Jim Comey himself had adhered to DOJ rules, we may never have had a Donald Trump presidency. So that's the emotional side of me. The rational side of me is mindful that what Donald Trump is trying to do right now to Jim Comey, to Letitia James, to Adam Schiff and others is worse. That's what's happening now. It is also worth noting that when prosecutors, as Barbara McQuade just said, when career staff tell the U.S. attorney that there is not enough evidence to obtain and sustain a conviction, that they're not going to move forward, that's the end of the story. And if a U.S. attorney agrees, that's also the end of the story. But what we have here is a president who doesn't care about facts and law. He doesn't care about the rule of law, which requires prosecutors to treat like cases alike. He cares about political retribution, and that's what we see unfolding right now in this challenging moment in American history at the Justice Department.
So, Barbara, a couple of quick things. First of all, when you have what seems to be a Department of Justice looking into...
There are other folks who are in those crosshairs. James Comey is the first in a series of those crosshairs to come into view, I think, for this administration. What are your thoughts there, Mark, on, the potential indictment of James Comey and, to use your word, the BS that it represents?
Yeah, look, I think that we need to recognize that James Comey is the victim of the weaponization of government. I don't like James Comey. James Comey put his finger on the scale to hurt Hillary Clinton's chances of being president in 2016. That is my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I am anything but an apologist for James Comey. But James Comey is being prosecuted because Donald Trump doesn't like him. John Bolton, another figure I'm not a big fan of, is being investigated because Donald Trump does not like him. And the only thing that I differ with the panel you had on before is it is cold comfort to say that in the end, these folks may get acquitted. It is cold comfort to say that they will bear the cost and the reputational harm and the sleepless nights of an investigation, an indictment, a prosecution, but that in the end, justice may be done. When justice is done at that point, it is no longer justice, okay? The fact is that the former U.S. attorney, acting U.S. attorney for Virginia, who resigned or was fired, is no hero in my book. Why did he agree to open this investigation? Why have people in that office and in other offices around this country humored Donald Trump, have humored Pam Bondi, and engaged in these witch hunt, these political prosecutions that if had done under the Biden administration would have been a national scandal and a national outrage. And now we say, well, as long as they are not ultimately convicted, justice is done. That is wrong. Okay, the fact is that justice is done when career prosecutors and political appointees don't bend. It's not that they don't break, they don't bend. And I don't want to hear about the lawyers' mortgages. I don't want to hear about their job prospects. I don't want to hear about any of them. No one made them go to law school. No one made them take jobs as U.S. attorney, as assistant U.S. attorneys. No one forced them to take an oath to uphold the law and the Constitution. Having done that, they either need to follow that oath or they need to resign. And don't expect me to grade them on a curve. And I beg the audience not to grade people on a curve.
Move against Comey is going to backfire on Trump for so many reasons, but one of them is that people in the FBI don't trust him. Like, career professionals don't trust him. He has no credibility there. It's the most ironic thing I've seen where, like, I think, like, Megyn Kelly came out a couple days ago and basically said, like, it doesn't matter if any of our guys break the law. Like, this was when Tom Homan the report came out about Tom Homan allegedly doing illegal stuff, and the charges were never brought against him. And then, he was put in the Trump administration despite the fact that he was under a criminal investigation, apparently. And she was like, I don't trust it. I don't trust anything the DOJ did under Biden because they hate conservatives. And again, it was standard Republican right-wing conservative projection. We accuse others of what we do, what our side does. And let's be clear, it's Trump who continues to, and likely will in the future, weaponize the DOJ, the FBI. Remember, the FBI is part of the DOJ. It's under the DOJ umbrella, of course. Against political enemies. Against Democrats, against Republicans that don't fall in line, against nonpartisan public servants that, did their job and prosecuted the J6 people, the people who investigated Donald Trump. And all of this is coming to a head as they're going after Comey. But I just think that there's going to be revenge on Trump. All these FBI people that they fired or that they forced to resign, or get fired, or that they forced out through basically making them choose between doing their job and breaking the law, type stuff like that, right? The fact is, all of those people are going to speak to the fact that Comey, love him or hate him, was a public servant doing his job, and Donald Trump is a totalitarian, crooked fascist. And I think that's going to make it very difficult to win in court.